back to everybody, or welcome if it's the first time that you are watching my YouTube channel, My Paranormal and Mystery TV. 1 year has passed by since my last documentary about Kurt Cobain's murder. So I want you to know that if you want to know the reason why I call it murder and not suicide, it's because I did many documentaries you can watch here completely for free on my YouTube channel, My Paranormal and Mystery TV. I did many documentaries I really received all the evidences that Kurt Cobain didn't kill himself, but it was a murder. His murderer, there was a mastermind in his murder who hired a killer to murder him and make it look like a suicide. You can watch all these concrete evidences in all my previous documentaries, because there also have been collateral victims, like for example El Duce and so on. But now, for the first time, I want to talk to you about the mysterious death of Kristen Pfaff, the bass player of The Hole, whose frontman is Courtney Love, the widow. And I want you to know immediately this: Kurt Cobain's death and Kristen Pfaff's death, the two deaths are linked 1000%. The only thing to discover is if the mastermind who hired a killer or killers to murder Kurt is also who made Kristen Pfaff murder, or if instead it has been really an accident, because Kristen Pfaff died after 2 months after Kurt Cobain's death in Seattle on June the 16th, 1994, in the apartment in which she left some of her objects. And because when she got to know that Kurt Cobain was dead, she quit The Hole. And so you must know that in the last times Kristen Pfaff had become an intimate friend of Kurt Cobain. So I want to tell you this: at the time her death was closed like an accidental heroin overdose, even if she went to rehab and she looked like out of drugs. And but before passing to watch at my personal computer all the incredible videos I received, and I didn't have a clue that last year, when I did my last documentary about the murder of Kurt Cobain, I still hadn't these videos so rare I can make you watch right now. I want to tell you one thing about these documents. That the mastermind of Kurt Cobain's murder is not me. That I accuse somebody, because I don't point my finger to anybody. But everybody, the evidences, the witnesses for many years have been pointing the finger to Courtney Love, the wife of Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain was close to divorce from Courtney Love. And so there was a great motive, if it's real, according to many evidences, that Courtney Love was completely shocked about Kurt's decision to divorce from her. And you can hear in my previous documentaries her rare secret phone call in which she talks sadly about Kurt Cobain asking her divorce. And from this divorce there was a clause of faithfulness. So Kurt was convinced that Courtney Love was unfaithful to him. So he could get the divorce and not to leave her in only penny. And he was very serious. But if, because I don't point my finger against Courtney Love, I explain you the reason why. Because I heard, I spoke with many journalists that the world is divided in two parts. One, many people love Courtney Love, and many people hate Courtney Love. There is not anybody in the middle. These journalists are completely wrong, because I am here, maybe I am the only one, but I am in the middle, because I don't hate Courtney Love. I don't love Courtney Love, but I'm in the middle, because I always admired her as a singer, musician, for her strength. And so, if she is guilty, and if she is the mastermind who hired a killer to murder Kurt Cobain, it's not me to state this, because there are many evidences about this. But if there will be ever a trial, there will be a jury and a judge. I don't judge Courtney Love, I don't judge anybody. I can tell you that if Courtney Love had, as many journalists, investigators say, the motive of money to make Kurt murder, they are not so right. Because you must know that in murders there are, when there is a murder, there are three motives. First one, money. Second one, a passional motive. The third one, a revenge. Many people reduced Courtney Love as a woman, a heartless woman, who just wanted money from Kurt. Instead, I can tell you that after all the material I just watched, Courtney Love was truly, madly, deeply in love with Kurt. So if she is guilty, it wasn't the money motive, there was more. Because in the last months, Kurt spent hours at the telephone with Kristen Pfaff, once the best friend of Courtney Love and the bass player of the whole. And Kristen was pretty clear that she got a crush on Kurt. And so there were many quarrels between Courtney Love and Kristen Pfaff. You want to steal my husband? I will show you the videos. And so she was so jealous about Kurt, and Kurt spent hours. And in this case, if I was Kurt Cobain wife, I would have been. I can understand Courtney Love feelings, because it's not right. Kurt was a married man, and so Courtney Love finds him spending hours and hours with a woman who was 27, a pretty girl, always staring at her husband, sharing many things in common. I can understand her jealousy. And then they had a daughter. They both loved their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. And if Kurt Cobain, it's for sure that went to rehab. So if he didn't touch drug anymore, he could fight with Courtney for the custody of the daughter Frances Bean. And this is more than a motive. If Courtney Love is guilty, it wasn't for money, there was much more. If she is guilty. And I also want to tell you that at this point the moment has arrived. Let's watch the videos, because we have to discover this documentary is dedicated to the mysterious death of Kristen Pfaff after 2 months after the murder of Kurt Cobain. Was it accidental, or was she murdered too? Let's watch the videos. Warning! Some images could disturb the sensitivity of the viewers.
Of Buffalo, New York, Kristen Pfaff would go to Catholic school where she learned cello and piano at a very young age. Her parents would divorce when she was young, but her mother would remarry and she would have a younger half-brother. Schoolmates of Pfaff would describe her to the Buffalo News as, and I quote, bright, happy, always peppy. Not only that, but she excelled in school, achieving good grades and getting scholarships. She would attend Boston College and do an exchange program in the Netherlands. It was after returning from overseas that she would study English literature at the University of Minnesota, starting in 1988. It was while she was a student at the university that she was an important figure in the development of the university's radio station called Radio K. That's when Kristen's life really changed. She learned to play bass and wanted to be in a band. She soon quit school and took up bass and started playing in a three-piece band called Janitor Joe that was part of the Minneapolis music scene. Janitor Joe played that Hole guitarist Eric Erlandson attended one of their gigs, and it was at this point in time that Hole was without a bass player and needed one for their upcoming European tour in 1993. Erlandson would recall to Spin magazine, "I found Kristen in LA and said, come with me to meet Courtney Love and Patty Schemmel when you get to Seattle." She joined the band, she moved to Seattle, and that's when all the songs came to life, literally. And so she was bringing that to Hole, and that created sparks in everybody. We all saw an even greater potential than before. It was during that European tour in 1993 that the band debuted the material that was going to make it onto their next record, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Sean Slade, who worked on Hole's second record, lived through this as an engineer and producer. He noticed that with the addition of Pfaff, the band sounded more musical. Hole would travel to Atlanta in October of 1993 to record their second album. Jim Marilis, a rep from Geffen Records, the band's label, would tell the Buffalo News Kristen was really excited about making a record with Hole. She was so enthusiastic. She couldn't wait to start touring.
Soon, Kristen and Eric were involved in a love relationship, and they became a couple.
Magazine, Kristen became Eric's girlfriend, so they were tight. Then there was me and my addiction with alcohol and drugs. Kristen and I would get together, and we were always trying to keep the amount of drugs we were doing secret. Don't tell Eric, there were so many secrets. We were all frustrated, and we all had a lot of downtime. And so to deal with that, there was a lot of hanging out. I was frustrated. I wanted to play. I wanted to record. The album, he and Pfaff had broken up, and there was this noticeable tension while recording the album. But it wasn't just Erlandson and Pfaff who had tension, as the bassist also started to butt heads with frontwoman Courtney Love. Pfaff, while new to the band, was pretty outspoken about musical ideas, and that apparently rubbed Courtney Love the wrong way. Another factor contributing to Love's resentment towards Pfaff, at least according to the book Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain, was that the bassist had struck up a friendship with Courtney Love's husband, Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. Pfaff and Cobain would bond over books and music, and Cobain even gave Pfaff a copy of the novel Perfume. Or news broke of Kurt Cobain's death. The news hit Pfaff particularly hard with her mother recalling in the same book. She was devastated. She lost someone she really respected. They had a lot in common.
Kristen!
A wake-up call for her. Kristen stopped doing drugs the day Kurt died. Within a week of Cobain dying, Hole's second record, Live Through This, was released. Some have even questioned the timing of the album's release. The day after Cobain's death made news, Kristen checked herself into a rehabilitation clinic in Minneapolis. The following month, she would speak to a local newspaper where she seemed to indicate that she was done with Seattle and happy to be back home, revealing, "I'm really having a great time doing the things I'm doing now here. Getting back to friends, playing music together, which I really missed. I couldn't get going in Seattle because the local music scene was so stagnant. There's a lot more going on in Minneapolis." Also contributing to her decision.
Then Kristen quit the Hole and decided to have a short tour in Europe in May 1994 with her former band Janitor Joe. But now we are in June 1994.
Planned on visiting Seattle once more in June of 94 to pick up the remainder of her belongings from her apartment. Her mother would have a bad feeling about her daughter's trip to Seattle, so much so that she asked her cousin Michael, who was a security guard, to accompany Kristen. Unfortunately, due to Janitor Joe's European tour being extended an additional week, it resulted in her Seattle trip also being postponed, and Michael could no longer accompany her. In Seattle on June 15th, 1994, and Pfaff would pack up her belongings in a U-Haul truck that her and Paul would plan on driving back to Minneapolis. Erickson had volunteered to sleep in the U-Haul truck to guard Pfaff's possessions, as theft was a huge problem in the area where she had previously lived. That night, Pfaff called one of her Janitor Joe bandmates, who recalled that Kristen seemed in a really good mood and happy to be done with the city. It was at 8:30 p.m. that Erickson recalled seeing Pfaff's ex-bandmate Eric Erlandson enter the apartment and leave about a half an hour later. Next morning, Erickson got up and went to get Pfaff so they could hit the road, but upon entering her apartment, he noticed that the bathroom door was still locked and heard no response on the other side. He would break down the door and find Pfaff unresponsive in the bathtub, sitting in a few inches of water. He would call 911, and by the time emergency services arrived, she was declared dead. The police was happy to be done with Seattle and content with life back home in Minneapolis. Why return to drugs after being clean and happy? Her death was declared an overdose, and Kristen would pass away at the age of 27, joining the infamous 27 Club along with Kurt Cobain. Kristen's mother, though, never accepted the police's explanation for her daughter's death and pushed for authorities to investigate her daughter's death as a homicide, but the police would claim there was no evidence of foul play. One of the other pieces of evidence found at the crime scene was Kristen's journal, which had several pages ripped out of it. Perhaps one of the strangest part of the story is that the coroner named Nicholas Hartshorn, who conducted the autopsy, was a close personal friend of Courtney Love and also did the autopsy for Kurt Cobain. Kristen's mother would be quoted as saying in the book I referenced earlier, "It concerns me and my family greatly that Dr. Hartshorn did the autopsy. I've heard all about his close friendship with Courtney, and it's a conflict of interest. It scares me. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I have my concerns." It was a sentiment that was also shared by her father, who told the Buffalo News, "It's important for me to let people know in Buffalo that my daughter..."
And now, let's delve into the relationship Kristen had with Kurt Cobain and her murder.
Some friction. It was probably made worse by the friendship that organically formed between Kristen and Kurt Cobain. Their relationship was totally platonic, and they had a lot in common. Kurt and Kristen were both quiet, loved art, reading books, and talking about the history of rock and roll. They would spend hours on the phone just chatting about those topics. And Courtney noticed the connection between Kristen and her husband, and understandably was not really happy about it. Now, Kurt didn't bond and connect with people like he did with Kristen. For example, Kurt's favorite book was Perfume by Patrick Suskind, and it was a book that meant a lot to him. And when he gave Kristen a copy, he wrote her a little note inside of it, and that was really the final straw for Courtney. She became openly critical and hostile towards Kristen, and it was just uncomfortable and awkward. And according to Kristen's mother, Janet, in early 1994, Kristen had a near-fatal overdose. And that, combined with all the drama with Hole, Kristen decided to move back to Minneapolis. While she was there, on April 8th, 1994, news broke about Kurt Cobain's death, and Kristen was absolutely devastated. Kurt had been a good friend to her, and she had a lot of respect for him. Her mom later said that it was on that day that Kristen stopped doing drugs. She actually checked herself into rehab the next day. After her time in rehab, she did a quick tour with Janitor Joe in May, and moving back to Minneapolis seemed to be a good thing for her. She was back with her friends, making music, and away from the drug scene in Seattle. Things were really turning around for her, and she decided that she was going to stay in Minneapolis, but she still had some of her things in her apartment in Seattle, where we are coming up to now.
This is where Kristen died.
Up the last of her belongings with her friend Paul Erickson. Now, originally her cousin, who was a security guard, was going to come here with her, but he had a conflict in his schedule, so she came out with Paul. And the plan was to get in, pack up the U-Haul truck, which was parked right here, and leave the next morning and drive back to Minneapolis. So it was a really short trip. Her apartment inside the apartment and quickly knew something was wrong. It was silent inside and Kristen was nowhere to be found. When he went to the bathroom, the door was still closed and locked, and when he knocked, there was no response. So he ended up breaking down the door, and inside he found Kristen unresponsive in a shallow pool of water in the tub. Now when the police arrived, she was declared dead that morning on June 16th. Now prior to Eric coming over, Kristen had talked to one of her friends on the phone who said that she was in great spirits. He said that she was looking forward to leaving Seattle behind and closing that chapter of her life. Eric was the last person to see her that night. Did his visit change things? Now, by all accounts, Kristen was clean and happy, and she was looking forward to leaving her life in Seattle behind. But police say that a bag filled with drug paraphernalia was found near her in the apartment. Her official cause of death was acute opiate intoxication. To many people, this did not make sense, especially her mother. Janet pressed police to investigate her daughter's death as a homicide, but police said there was no evidence of foul play and that it was an overdose. Now, I talked a lot about SPD's death investigation procedures in the deep dive into Kurt. Remember Dr. Hartshorn? He performed Kurt's autopsy, and he also did Kristen's. Now remember, he was a close personal friend of Courtney Love, so you can see how for some people this might seem suspicious, especially because we know there was tension between the two.
If you want to know more about Dr. Nicholas Arthwart, I suggest you to watch my previous documentaries, so you can understand better the situation, the torpid situation.
We all know that Courtney Love says some crazy things, but in an interview with Rolling Stone that she did 7 months after Kristen's death, which would have been 9 months after Kurt's, she had this to say about Kristen. Quote, "I didn't process it, man. The only time I processed it was when I spoke with her mother. I could not extend in words to lose your child. I had to go over there and get Eric away from the body. Kristen was his lover for a really long time. He had already broken down bathroom door after bathroom door for her. He'd kick in drug dealers' doors." End quote. So, she said she had to go over there and get Eric away from Kristen's body. When? When were they both over there when Kristen was dead? That night that Paul checked on her, she was snoring in the bathroom, and in the morning when he went inside, he said the bathroom door was still locked. In fact, he had to break down the door before calling 911. She was a DOA at 10:40 a.m. when police arrived, and the only person noted on scene on SPD's incident log is Paul. Now we know from Tom Grant's investigation that Courtney said many contradicting things, but this one was just very specific.
Around 9:30 a.m. on June 16, 1994, Pfaff was found dead in her apartment by Paul Erickson, a friend with whom she had planned to leave for Minneapolis that day. On the floor there was a bag containing syringes and drug paraphernalia. Pfaff's death was attributed to acute opiate intoxication. Her father, Norman Pfaff, described her as bright, personable, wonderful, very talented, smart, and she always seemed to be in control of her circumstances. Last night she wasn't. In the book Love and Death, released April 2004, Kristen Pfaff's mother, Janet Pfaff, states she has never accepted the official story regarding her daughter's death. Janet.
In fact, the finding of the dead body of Kristen, there are so many contradictions. Paul Erickson found the corpse of Kristen in the bathtub. So, how was it possible when Courtney Love stated that Eric found the body, he cried? Now listen to Patty. And now, incredible, very rare video and audio recordings by Courtney Love talking about the body of Kristen. What? A friend of mine sent me this link that is in Spanish, but don't worry, I translate you these rare documents, videos, and the relationship between Kristen and Kurt. Don't worry if it's in Spanish, I am translating you in English. I start.
Nunca aceptaron la versión de la policía.
The parents of Kristen didn't accept the reconstruction of police. And Courtney scared Kristen very much. And more than once, she threatened Kristen to make her life impossible.
Algo para hacerme la vida imposible. En una ocasión, Rockers, inclusive.
Once, Courtney Love told this. You are my guitar player. They want to say you are my bass player, and you are always looking at my husband. You have put your eyes on my husband, and now you tell me how I have to sing. Stop, or you will repent for the rest of your life.
Y ahora me estás diciendo cómo cantar. Simplemente no me jodas porque te arrepentirás para siempre. Lo anterior revela que entre ambas había una fuerte tensión.
There was a very great tension, and also this copybook found by Kristen's mother missed some pages, and Kristen's mother is convinced that in those torn pages there were many pages referring to Kristen's relationship with Kurt Cobain and maybe her doubts about the death of Kurt Cobain.
Agregar a la historia, Kurt y Kristen eran amigos muy cercanos, inclusive.
According to Kristen, he was a close friend. He said that she was very talented in music and also a beautiful soul. She had a very beautiful soul, but if Courtney discovers all these appreciations, she will rise hell against Kristen.
Creo que es tan hermosa, pero si alguna vez digo eso y Courtney se entera, sería un infierno. Entonces, Kristen Rockers tenía mucho miedo de Courtney Love.
Kristen was very scared by Courtney Love because Courtney Love often threatened her, telling her, will turn your life into hell, and you will repent it forever.
Lo cual también fue confirmado por su madre y su hermano, Jason Pfaff.
And also her mother and brother
Que ella quisiera dejar a Hall y a Courtney Love. Así como Kurt Cobain quería
say that she was very scared by Courtney Love. But according to Kristen's brother, the relationship, the affair she had with Kurt was only platonic. Was it true?
Nirvana y con 2 meses de diferencia.
And there were, even if there were many differences, there were many similarities, even in differences between Kurt Cobain and Kristen's death, because heroin was involved in both the two cases. If you want to visit the tomb of Kristen Pfaff, I want to make you see her tomb. She is buried at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo. Watch.
And then this is her. Yeah. So here's the headstone first. And then they put this up for her afterwards. Really nice. Looks like part of it's fallen off or something.
Huge.
Yeah. It's a big monument to her.
Do you want to know how really started the relationship between the fatal love between Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love? Because many people haven't told you exactly how they met. And in this video you will also understand many infidelities also by Kurt Cobain towards Courtney Love before marriage, so you can understand better the fragile mind and about Courtney Love, because Courtney Love had a very tough childhood and adolescence. She suffered many abuses. And so this video can make you understand better also Courtney Love's mind. And because she was always so afraid to be betrayed by Kurt. Kurt was
Nirvana's second album, Nevermind. Courtney just lived 3 blocks away from Kurt's apartment. On May 17th, Kurt attends a Butthole Surfers L7 show. There he finds Courtney with British journalist Everett True. Kurt approaches them and the 3 end up wrestling on the floor. They all talk for a while and Courtney gives Kurt her number. Kurt calls her that same night at 5 a.m. and asks to meet her the following day only to stand her up. Kurt later told biographer Michael Azerrad why. I couldn't decide if I wanted to consummate our relationship. I was determined to be a bachelor for a few months. But I knew that I liked Courtney so much right away that it was a really hard struggle to stay away from her for so many months. On June 14th, their bands, Nirvana and Hole.
Meanwhile, Courtney Love had become Billy Corgan's girlfriend. Billy Corgan's the frontman of the band Smashing Pumpkins.
Courtney flies to Billy Corgan's hometown, Chicago, to spend a few days with him. When Courtney arrives, she finds Corgan with another woman in his apartment.
His girlfriend threw shoes at me, and I was like, fine, you didn't tell me you had a girlfriend. I didn't know there was a girlfriend.
With nowhere to go.
11 p.m., Courtney headed to the other place she knew in Chicago, the Cabaret Metro. Nirvana was playing when Courtney arrived and told them what had happened with Corgan. After the show, they went to the club Crash Palace, where Kurt started modeling Courtney's lingerie until it closed for the night. Then, they went to Marie's Rip Tide, where Kurt and Courtney kissed and partied well into the night. Dave Grohl, who was sharing room 307 with Kurt at the currently named Hotel Versi, was asleep when Kurt and Courtney started having passionate and loud sex in the bed next to Dave's. In 1993, Grohl told Azarad,
"I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. I had to leave the room."
The day after, Kurt and Courtney said goodbye in Minneapolis, knowing they were seeing each other in 10 days since they already had some scheduled shows together in California and Mexico. By mid-October, Nevermind finally enters Billboard's Hot 200 at a discreet 144. Kurt and Courtney spend 5 days together playing in Tijuana and Los Angeles, where they do drugs together for the first time. Both had already done heroin in the late 80s. On October 27th, during soundcheck, Courtney admits on a home video that she thinks her relationship with Kurt is over. That morning, she had refused to do drugs and he didn't take it well. They make up and, knowing they are going to be apart, give each other some of their favorite clothes. November arrives and Kurt and Courtney call each other every day while on tour. Kurt told Michael Azarad,
"That's when we started really falling in love, on the phone. We called each other almost every night and faxed each other every other day."
Remember the busker woman from Boston? Clueless, Lorde flies to London to be with Kurt on Nirvana's European leg. It's November the 5th and Kurt and Lorde share Kurt's hotel room that night. Meanwhile, in New York, Courtney wears Kurt's torn sweater for a photo shoot with Michael Levine. The day after, Courtney's next stop is Boston, Lorde's hometown, and where a DJ tells Courtney about Lorde flying to the UK to be with Kurt just minutes before Hole's performance starts. Broken-hearted, Courtney improvises a new song which would later be called Doll Parts.
At 3 a.m.
London time, Courtney calls Kurt and asks him,
Who the F is Mary Lou Lorde and why are people saying she's your girlfriend?
Kurt denies everything just 4 feet away from Lorde. The morning after, Kurt dumps the busker and still upset Courtney performs in Boston the following day.
It's November the 8th and Nirvana
Are about to film their first television performance. Before playing Smells Like Teen Spirit, Kurt says,
I feel like all of you people in this room know that Courtney Love, the lead singer of the sensational pop group Hole, is the best fuck in the world.
Courtney finds out about Kurt's words 4 days later, and just minutes before getting on stage in Athens. There, she graffitis next to an already written Nirvana message on the venue's wall.
Cobain is the best fuck in the world.
After the show, she sent Kurt a fax that read,
I am doll parts, bad skin, doll hearts. It stands for knife, for the rest of my life. Peel my little heart off, and soak it in your left hand, and call me tonight.
On November 23rd, Nirvana and Hole performed together.
in December.
Continue touring apart. On December the 8th, Nirvana cancels their remaining European shows and everyone takes 20 days off. A spokesperson says that Kurt has flown home for rest and recuperation. However, Kurt had other plans. On the 10th, he takes a flight to London to join Hole's European tour. When his flight is delayed, everyone leaves for Newport but Courtney and Hole's booking agent, Russell Warby, who patiently wait for Kurt's arrival. During the almost 3-hour ride, Russell's car crashes and has to be put on a low loader. A still shaken and confused Courtney finally shows up and performs with nobody recognizing Kurt in the venue. The legend says that he proposed later that night. The day after, a British journalist asks Courtney about Kurt's statement on the word. Clueless about their love relationship, he thinks Kurt was feuding with Courtney.
Why did you ask that dumb question first? That's really lame.
I
But I want to know why you asked it
it
first. Oh, that I get pissed off about it? I'm not that pissed about it. I mean, it was sweet. He was just trying to be sweet.
Do you know him really well, or
Yeah, he's my boyfriend.
is it?
Yeah.
On the 16th, Hole starts touring the West Coast with the Smashing Pumpkins, and Kurt is still by Courtney's side. On the 19th, after a show in San Francisco, Courtney mocked what were to be their wedding vows, writing,
Do you, Kurt Cobain, take Courtney Michelle Love to be your lawful shredded wife, even when she's a bitch with zits and siphoning all your money for doping and whoring?
with Kurt replying, Okay. Kurt must have treasured this note because he carried it with him for the rest of his life, as it was found inside his wallet when he died. On the 27th, it's time for Nirvana to work again and Kurt wears Courtney's baby doll dress on stage. During an interview, Kurt declared,
I'm getting married, and that's a total revelation, emotionally. I've never felt so secure in my life, and so happy.
And this was the beginning of the end.